Hello everyone, and welcome back to Game Easy, Roll Good. Today we're going to talk about using our hit point dice. This was sort of inspired by when I was going through the changes to all the magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide for 2024. There's, I think, one specific item at least that I came across that I was like, you know what, I feel like I've read a lot of different ways to kind of use our hit point dice in different ways that are outside of short rests. So I kind of made a note that I wanted to look into all the different ways that we can use our hit point dice now. So that's what this video is for. There's actually been one sort of big change to the way that hit point dice work in 2024. So there's not really much of an intro to get through here, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So first things first, in 2014, the way that hit point dice were recovered is that during a long rest, technically you could only regain up to half of your total hit point dice. So for example, like it says here, if you had 8 total hit point dice, you could recover up to 4 of them, assuming that you had spent 4 of them during that day. This means that if you had 0 hit point dice left after a long adventuring day, that you could only recover 4 of them after that long rest. So if you have a lot of heavy, back-to-back adventuring days that have a lot of different encounters that are dealing a lot of damage and you don't have a lot of ways to recover that damage, you sort of are playing this sort of war of attrition with that, and you're going to need to actually take actual time off eventually, at least 2 days, to recover your full hit point die pool. I'm not sure how many tables are actually aware of this rule or actually even follow it, but in 2024 that actually doesn't matter anymore. Because in 2024, they changed the long rest rules that you regain all of your spent hit point dice. So you're no longer playing that sort of war of attrition. So if you need to do like back-to-back adventuring days, you'll always have that pool of recovery to work from. This also just means that you can be a bit more aggressive with your hit die usage. While I still think that a well-rounded group will have other ways to recover outside of combat, outside of taking short rests, whether it be potions or different spells and things like that, class features, species features that allowed some spot healing here and there. You no longer really need to worry about using too many hit dice and then not having enough for the next day. This can also make it so that since we can be a little more aggressive with healing with our hit point dice, that maybe we don't need to use quite as many of those external resources. That might save, 1 or 2 spell slots throughout an adventuring day. Or if we end up getting more ways to utilize hit dice for reasons other than healing, then we can do more of that instead, while also knowing that we have a group that has a lot of out-of-combat recovery to allow us to move from one encounter to the next. The first thing that we're going to look at are what species options do we have that maybe allow us to do different things with our hit dice or use a hit dice essentially outside of a short rest. And unfortunately, we only have one, and that is the Autonome. It is a little unfortunate that this is the only one, because I think this is one of the species that maybe not every DM would allow in one of their adventure settings. I know some DMs don't even allow like the Warforged, so if they don't allow the Warforged, then they're probably definitely not going to allow the Autonome as well. This one is specifically associated with the Spelljammer campaign setting, but with Spelljammer, you can technically go anywhere with it, so it doesn't really matter what world you're in, there could be Autonomes there. I guess the only exception would be Eberron, since that's sort of locked away from the rest of the multiverse essentially. But the Autonomes specifically have a feature called Healing Machine. It says if the mending spell is cast on you, you can spend a hit die, roll it, and regain a number of hit points equal to the roll plus your Constitution modifier, minimum of 1 point. This is effectively the same healing that you would get during a short rest. You do have to spend those hit dies one at a time. I think mending is like a minute technically to cast. But while you're going from one place to another, you can kind of easily make quick repairs to yourself. Or if you have like a whole party of Autonomes, so you never need to take a short rest outside of recovering, short rest features like your action surges or warlock spell slots and things like that. But as far as healing goes, you never need to stop to short rest in order to heal. The Autonome also has a second part of this feature that says that they're allowed to benefit from spells like Cure Wounds, Healing Word, Mass Cure Wounds, Mass Healing Word, and Spare the Dying. It is worth noting in 2024 that none of those spells exclude the constructs or undead anymore. So as long as you're within 2024 rules, that second paragraph of this feature is no longer relevant because all those spells will work on you anyway. But that is the only species within 5th edition that has an alternate use for their hit die or is able to use their hit die in sort of a different way. Let's look at some feats that maybe either give us an alternate use for our hit dice or buff the healing from our hit dice in some way. The first one we're going to look at here is called Strike of the Giants. This one specifically doesn't do anything for our hit dice, but it is a prerequisite for one that does. So this one is from Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. It's a prerequisite of either having martial weapon proficiency or the giant foundling background, and we'll talk about that in a second. When you take this feat, you can choose from a number of features that are related to the different kinds of giants. For our purposes, we are going to want to take the Hill Strike feature because we want to be associated with hill giants. The specific feature allows you to, a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, bonus per long rest. Deal an extra 1d6 damage of the weapon's type on a hit. The creature must also make a strength saving throw or fall prone. So that's pretty cool, but that's not really what we're taking it for. The feat that we really want is called Vigor of the Hill Giant. So you need to be at least level 4 in order to take this one, and you need to have the Strike of the Giant's feat, choosing the Hill Strike feature, of course, like we mentioned. And the one feature that we're interested in on this feat is called Iron Stomach. It says whenever you eat food as part of a short rest and spend 1 or more hit dice to regain hit points, you regain additional hit points equal to your Constitution modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Note this isn't per hit dice spent, because that would be pretty broken. It is just a number that you add to the total. So if you have a +3 to your proficiency bonus and a +2 to your Constitution, even if you spend 3 hit dice, you're only still regaining an extra 5 hit points from this feature, but that is still 5 hit points that you weren't gaining before. And it's also kind of nice because you are sort of double dipping in your Constitution modifier, because you already add your Constitution modifier through the individual rolls of your hit dice during a short rest. But then you're also getting an additional bonus based on this feature as well. But again, it is only a one-time bonus per short rest. So this is a 2 feat combo, which can be kind of prohibitive to get into, but fortunately there's sort of an easy way to get it, and of course that is by the Giant Foundling background. The Giant Foundling background was again introduced in Big B Presents Glory of the Giants. You don't need to be a giant to have this. You are someone who is found by giants. You are a foundling. Basically, you were raised among a certain type of giants. It gives you skill proficiencies in intimidation and survival. As it's written in the book, at least, it gives you language proficiency in giant and one other language of your choice. It gives you an equipment package. Of course, it gives you the Strike of the Giant's feat as the feature of this background. So in this way, Strike of the Giants is sort of like an origin feat before origin feats existed in the 2024 Player's Handbook. However, I will say that this background isn't formatted the exact same way as backgrounds are in the 2020 Player's Handbook. If you are a DM and you wanted to port this over into 2024 rules, you would first need to remove the languages and put in a tool proficiency of your choice or of your player's choice if you wanted to be flexible. And then you would also need to, of course, add the fixed ability scores that they can choose to add to. For giants, you might choose something like Strength, Con, and Wisdom, or you can be kind and let them just choose whatever ability scores that they want to put them into. And then while we're on the topic of racial feats, we can talk about Dwarven Fortitude. This one is from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, so this one gives you +1 to Con. And then this one says whenever you take the dodge action in combat, you can spend 1 hit die to heal yourself. You roll the die, add your con modifier, and then you regain hit points equal to the total. So basically exactly the same as you would get from a short rest. This one's okay. It does require you to take the dodge action in combat, which isn't easy for a lot of people, but this would be particularly good on a dwarf monk. Because of course monks have the patient defense feature, which allows you to do that as a bonus action when you spend your key point, or I can't remember what it's called in 2024 now, but essentially a key point to take the dodge action as a bonus action. And in 2024, I believe it is disengage and dodge. So you disengage, dodge, and then if you have this feat as well, it would be disengage, dodge, and spend a hit die to heal yourself, which is a pretty good combination of things. It's not necessarily the strongest feat overall, but it's certainly not bad if you're a dwarven monk. The next one I wanted to look at is durable. So the durable feat, at least in 2024, again, raises your constitution score by 1, gives you advantage on death saving throws, and then for our purposes, it has speedy recovery. It says as a bonus action, you can expend 1 of your hit point dice, roll the die, and regain a number of hit points equal to the roll. Note that we're not adding any bonuses to it at this time. We're not adding our constitution modifier or anything along those lines, but this is sort of the price that we pay for convenience. Like, this isn't limited to only a dwarf, so it's not quite as strong as the Dwarven Fortitude. It is automatically a bonus action. You don't need to specifically be a monk to enable it as a bonus action like Dwarven Fortitude. It's more convenient, more applicable to everyone, so it's not quite as strong. If you happen to still be within the 2014 rules, I don't know that I would consider picking this one up, because in 2014, all this one really does is set a floor for what you can recover from your hit point dice equal to your constitution modifier. So if you have a con modifier +2, whenever you roll hit point dice, you can't roll below a 2 essentially. Not really the best feat. That's probably why they changed it. And while I'm not personally big on the durable feat, just kind of in general, I do think there are good use cases for it. For example, I am running a one-shot currently with my play group, and actually a couple of my players actually picked up the durable feat. And at the time, that wasn't a choice that I would ever think to make, but I think within the context of a one-shot, and especially if you know that you're going into a one-shot where there aren't going to be any short rests, you essentially have this pool of hit die that you aren't otherwise going to be able to use. So a feat like this would then give you access to that resource during combat. Even if it's not the same strength of healing as you would get during a short rest, you're not getting a short rest anyway, or maybe you're having very limited short rests. So this is just giving you access to that pool of resources that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. Moving on, we also have the Chef Feat. This was originally introduced, I believe, in Xanathar's Guide to Everything or Tasha's, one of the two. I think it's mostly the same in the 2024 Player's Handbook. The feature that we're interested in the most here is Replenishing Meal. It says as part of a short rest, you can make special food, and provided that you have ingredients and the cook's utensils on hand. You can prepare enough food for a number of creatures equal to 4 plus your proficiency bonus, so should be most of, if not all of your party. And then it says at the end of the short rest, any creature who eats the food and spends 1 or more hit dice to regain hit points regains an extra 1d8 hit points. So again, that is not per hit die spent, that is just a bonus on top of your hit dice. And that rule probably sounds very familiar because that was very similar to the Vigor of the Hill Giants feat, which actually combos pretty well with the Chef feat, because not only does the Vigor of the Hill Giant feat say that you need to consume food during the short rest that you gain that benefit from, and then the Chef feat allows you to prepare that food and then gives you an extra bonus for eating it as well. So if you have both of these feats, both Chef and Vigor of the Hill Giant, then you specifically, when you eat your own food during a short rest, you're regaining 1d8 plus your Constitution modifier plus your proficiency bonus on top of all the other healing that you're getting from your hit dice as well. And then of course, you're also providing that extra healing from the Chef feat specifically to the rest of your party. So those are all the feats that either benefit hit dice or let us use them in different ways. Let's take a look at a couple spells that also allow us to use our hit dice. So the first one that we might know already is Wither and Bloom. This one existed pre-2024. This was introduced in Strixhaven. Basically what it is that you can do a small sort of necrotic AoE in an area, affecting only creatures of your choice. And then what you can also do is choose another creature of your choice in that area and allow them to expend one of their hit dice and regain hit points equal to that roll plus your spellcasting ability modifier. This spell is available to druids, sorcerers, and wizards. And then if you are upcasting this spell, the creature can expend an additional hit die per spell level above 2. The second spell that's available is Arcane Vigor. This one was introduced in 2024. So this one is available only to sorcerers and wizards. It is a second level spell, just like Wither and Bloom. However, it is a bonus action, and it allows you to expend 1 or 2 of your hit dice and regain a number of hit points equal to the roll, plus your spellcasting ability modifier, and then you expend those hit dice, so you're actually using them. And then when you upcast the spell, the number of unexpended hit die that you can roll increases by 1 for each spell slot level above 2. I could have sworn that I saw Arcane Vigor sort of all over the place when I was going through the Player's Handbook and all the different rules and changes and everything like that. I didn't realize that it was only limited to sorcerers and wizards. I thought for sure that at least the Warlock also had it, but I guess not. I know it existed in one of the expanded spell lists in the Origin feats for the Eberron setting that we just saw. However, it is worth noting that bards can use their magical secrets to get either of these spells if they wanted to. An Eldritch Knight fighter could get access to either of them as well as an Arcane Trickster rogue. Especially for someone like a fighter who has a bigger hit die, something like Arcane Vigor would be a lot more valuable to them than it would be for necessarily a sorcerer or a wizard who only has the d6. So now that we've looked at our spells, let's look into some class or subclass features that benefit from hit die. Unfortunately, there's not really a whole lot of them. In fact, it's limited to basically just the Warlock. The Warlocks, first things first, have the Life Drinker invocation. I believe this is specifically the 2024 version. The 2014 version doesn't use hit dice at all. It says once per turn, when you hit a creature with your packed weapon, you can deal some extra damage. And then you can also choose to spend one of your hit point dice, roll it, and gain a number of hit points equal to that roll plus your Constitution modifier. So again, it's at least the exact same amount that you would normally get during a short rest. Unfortunately, it is locked behind level 9, so you need to be a pretty high level Warlock to make use of this feature. And it also requires you to have the Pact of the Blade invocation as well. Notably, you do get a sort of a free invocation at level 1 that's supposed to kind of be that pact choice, although there are other invocations that are available at level 1 as well that aren't the pact invocations. I think there's maybe 1 or 2. Then in a previous video when I was talking about hit point dice and what kind of class features interact with hit point dice, someone did mention that this combos very well with another Warlock invocation that was published before. It's not in the 2024 Player's Handbook, but of course everything's backwards compatible. You should be able to use the other older invocations as well. This one is called Gift of the Ever-Living Ones. It says, when you regain hit points while your familiar is within 100 feet of you, treat any dice rolled to determine the hit points you regain as having rolled their maximum value for you. So this one requires Pact of the Chain because you're having that familiar from Pact of the Chain. But if you were to have Pact of the Chain and have Life Drinker and you have your familiar out and you use the Life Drinker ability, then you automatically gain the max number of hit point dice on that roll, in addition to just any other healing. So that's a pretty powerful combination. It is very invocation hungry, so you're probably going to be very locked into these specific invocations and not having a lot of flexibility with whichever ones that you choose, maybe not until higher levels, but that is certainly a lot of healing. But unlike in 2014 and 2024, because pacts are invocations and they aren't exclusive, you can choose more than one of them. So you could have Pact of the Blade and Pact of the Chain and Life Drinker and Gift of the Ever-Living Ones. You can mix and match all of these together. Whether or not it's optimal to do so is up to the eye of the beholder, I suppose. But there is actually one other Warlock subclass feature that sort of interacts with our hit dice, and that is specifically going to be for the Genie Lock. So the level 10 feature, the Sanctuary Vessel, says whenever you take the short rest using your bottled respite feature, which can be done in only 10 minutes, anyone who finishes the short rest in that sanctuary can add your proficiency bonus to the number of hit points they regain if they spend any hit dice as part of that short rest. So again, that's not added to each roll of the hit point dice, that is just an extra healing bonus on top of everything else. And again, that probably sounds very similar to the Vigor of the Hill Giant feat, of course, which allows you to add your Constitution modifier plus your proficiency bonus whenever you spend hit dice as part of a short rest. Notably, it is a rule that you can't add your proficiency bonus more than once to any number, not just any roll. It says any number in the Player's Handbook, at least for 2024. I don't know about 2014, but in the 2024 Player's Handbook, it says you can't add your proficiency bonus more than once to any roll or any number. So we can't double dip here. But again, you do only get the Sanctuary Vessel benefit once per long rest. So if you're taking multiple short rests a day, which hopefully you are as a Warlock, the Vigor of the Hill Giant will still carry you through on those other short rests. And also, if you are someone who has the Vigor of the Hill Giant feat and someone else is the Genie Lock in your group, then you can double dip on their proficiency bonus, because the rule only says that you can't add your proficiency bonus to any roll or number more than once, not that you can't add someone else's proficiency bonus to yours, which is sort of like a neat little loophole, but it's technically rules as written sort of thing. And I did want to give an honorable mention to the Bard. This was sadly removed from the Bard in 2024. I'm not sure why, but the Song of Rest is you play music as a Bard during a short rest. Anyone who hears your performance and is using their hit die during that short rest to regain hit points also gains an extra d6, and that scales as you level up in Bard as well. Again, I was a little sad to see this one go. I mean, I would probably consider letting Bards still have it just because I think it's a nice feature. But if you're still in 2014 rules, then you would still definitely have that available for you. So that is all our class and or subclass features. Let's take a look at some magic items that also benefit our hit dice in different ways. So starting with the one that started this whole video, essentially, is the Periapt of Wound Closure. This one has a feature called Natural Healing Boost. I believe it worked the exact same way in the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, but they just kind of reformatted it. It says, whenever you roll a hit point die to regain hit points, double the number of hit points it restores. So that doesn't matter if it's during a short rest, that doesn't matter if it's the Arcane Vigor spell, it doesn't matter if it's Wither and Bloom, doesn't matter if it's the Durable feat, doesn't matter if it's the Life Drinker invocation. Whenever you're spending your hit point dice to regain hit points, you just double that number. Notably, this does only double the number of hit points gained from rolling your hit dice. It does not necessarily benefit the extra healing that you would get from things like the Vigor of the Hill Giant or the Chef feat, because that's just extra healing that isn't tied to the roll of the hit die itself. However, if you are that Warlock who is the Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Chain, Life Drinker, Gift of the Ever-Living Ones Warlock, then not only are you maximizing the healing that you get from that dice roll by taking the max value, but you're also doubling that number. So that is a lot of extra healing if you were able to pull something like this off, whether it's, again, like if you're going into a one-shot and you're able to pick certain magic items, or if you're just able to like sort of find this and buy this in your campaign. One way or the other, you can try to get access to this item, and even if you're not that Warlock, I think this is still very, very good, provided that you have maybe a couple different ways to spend your hit dice outside of short rest. But even if it's only during short rests, that's going to save you so much other resources throughout the adventuring day. It's either going to save you resources or it's going to save your party resources as well. The next magic item is the Delver's Claws. This one is introduced to Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. This one lets you use an action to spend a number of hit dice up to your proficiency bonus. You roll them, and then of course you regain a number of hit points equal to the total plus your Constitution modifier. You can do this only once per long rest, so it's just sort of like a healing surge sort of thing. So that's pretty cool, but it is pretty limited in use. There's actually a number of items in Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants that also allow you to use your hit die in offensive ways, like adding a damage to certain attacks and things like that. I'm not including them here because I'm mostly focusing on healing using our hit dice. Maybe if we start seeing in the future that there are more ways that are being added to use hit dice in an offensive manner, then I'll make a video that includes those as well. You can certainly look them up on D&D Beyond if you have access to that. Or I'm sure they exist on the internet somewhere if you don't have access to it. But there is one more magic item that I want to touch on that allows you to heal using your hit dice outside of a short rest, and that is the Fate Dealer's deck. This one is from the Book of Many Things. This one specifically does require attunement by a cleric or a paladin. Notably, you would only need one level in cleric or paladin to use it. So if you are some sort of multi-class where you have, maybe minimal levels in one of these classes, it still counts. For the most part, this is just a buffed spell casting focus. It can give you a +1, 2, or 3 to your spell attack rolls and save DC, but it also allows you to, while you're holding the deck, to draw the card as an action and expend one of your hit dice and add the dex bonus to the number rolled. And then when you do that, one creature you can see within 30 feet of you either takes radiant damage or regains hit points, your choice equal to that total. So this is sort of kind of the best of both worlds, where you can either heal yourself or an ally with it, or you can deal damage to an enemy with it if you'd like. But still just a pretty cool item. And then lastly, as it pertains to the Periapt of Wound Closure specifically, If you're using the new 2024 rules, and specifically if you're using Bastions, and you're just wondering how can I get the periaptive wound closure, like none of the magic shops in this campaign setting have it for whatever reason. The one way that you would be able to get access to it is through the sacristy in the Bastion. This requires level 9, but it does have the craft magic item relic, and the periaptive wound closure specifically is on the relic tables in the Dungeon Master's Guide for 2024. In order to have this facility, you do need to be able to use a holy symbol or a druidic focus as a spellcasting focus, and unfortunately this is locked behind level 9 like I mentioned. All the other treasure types like Arcana, Implements, and whatever the other one is, I can't remember off the top of my head, they all have level 5 Bastion facilities that can do this. I don't know why relics specifically are locked behind level 9, but notably you also don't need to be the one who has this facility. Like if you have an ally who is a cleric or a druid or paladin or whatever it might be, you can work with them to have them craft that magic item, assuming that they're not doing anything else with that facility for that time. But that would be an option available to you, at least to access the periaptive wound closure, you know, if you're trying to pull off some combination of using that item with any of the features that we covered here in this video. So that's all I really wanted to cover. Overall, I'm kind of surprised by the results here now that I took the time to really kind of dig into all the ways that we were able to use hit dice in 2024, or at least all the things that benefit using our hit dice in 2024. Well, I was going through all the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I guess there's not really much in the Monster Manual, but I feel like I saw way more uses or alternate uses for hit dice, but maybe I was just reading the same features over and over again. Like seeing Arcane recover multiple times, thinking about Wither and Bloom, seeing the periaptive wound closure. Maybe I just kind of thought about those so many times that it felt like there were more features that enabled it. Of course, the Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Chain, Genie Lock with the Life Drinker, Gift of the Ever-Living Ones combination is sort of the big outlier here, especially if you're also the Auto Gnome species at the same time. So you're just kind of making as much use of every feature that I mentioned here that you can. You could even take the Giant Foundling background and then take the Vigor of the Hill Giant Feet later on and have all of the different bonuses. Warlocks don't naturally get access to the Mending spell, but you could probably find a way to get it if you really wanted to. That way you could at least self-repair as the Auto Gnome. But yeah, overall I'm just kind of surprised that there wasn't as much stuff as I thought there was as far as different ways to use it, at least outside of a short rest. So I would ask you, if you're a DM, you know, have you created different ways to use hit dice in your game if you felt like they were an underutilized resource? If you are a player, of course, I would ask you the same question. Has a DM ever, you know, given you different ways to use your hit dice through some sort of house rule? I know in a campaign that we finished recently, the DM allowed us to, during a short rest at least, expend 2 hit dice to recover a spell slot equal to half our proficiency bonus rounded up, I believe it was. So it was sort of like a packed spell slot, but we had to expend our hit dice to get it back. And the spells that you could get back weren't necessarily on curve with the spells that you could cast, but it was just something that we could do to spend the extra hit dice as well. And I thought that was kind of cool. So you can let me know all that down in the comments. And again, while you're going down to those comments, please hit that like button. If you're a new viewer or returning viewer to this channel and you like what you saw here and you want to see more from me, please consider hitting that subscribe button now and support the channel. I release videos every Wednesday and Sunday, so you always have something to look forward to. I appreciate all of your time, and I'll see you in the next one.